Hi.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Happy Happy Thursday.
Happy
It is.
Thursday.
So today we're talking about offers and contracts. So just kind of what as a seller, what you can expect to see on an offer.
Hmm.
Yes.
Um,
Multiple
so I
offers.
mean, yeah.
I'm gonna
So
leave it.
I'll
That
Yeah,
seems
go
like the
ahead.
world we're coming back into here. So
Yeah, years of the last few years, we pretty much, if you went on the market, you had multiple offers. It was like so rare to
Yeah.
not. We're not seeing that as much. A lot of people are saying like, oh, it's the winter market. I don't think so. I think it's always going to come down to price. You've been on the market 30 days. Nobody's paying you that full price.
yes, I,
You have to readjust, whether it's readjust your price or just readjust your expectations even. So
Good
just
point.
kind of wanted to start there. So if you, depending on where you start in the market, as far as price, what you and your agents have decided is a good strategy price wise is ultimately going to determine whether you're going to get multiple offers or not. So if you do, we'll just do a little like recap because we're not seeing all these crazy things as often. So
Yeah.
no inspections. We're not seeing that as often. We're not seeing people waive inspections. I feel
Good
like we're
point.
still seeing like a good amount of, so I'm just going to touch on like the contingencies that we see. So we're not seeing people waiving that inspection as often as we were. If you do, are you lucky and you get a multiple offer, you might have one in there that is completely waiving it. You have to keep in mind that waiving the inspection is different than purchasing it as is. So two different things. Illinois has restructured our offer to purchase. So it really breaks that down. It makes it so easy to explain it to the seller and have them
yeah.
understand. So now they could check that it's completely as is. And that's acknowledging that the seller wants to sell it as is. So I'm saying, I know you want to sell it as is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. So I'm an initial here. And then the buyers still
Mm.
have options to choose from. So those options are, I'm going to buy it. I'm still going to do an inspection and I'm going to maybe ask you for stuff. So they could initial that. That's one of their choices. Or I'm going to do an inspection for informational purposes only, and I will not ask for things. I'm not allowed to ask for things. So they can, also pick that one. And there was one other one too. No request, with request, or complete waiver. So
Um,
Illinois really has breaking it down in this new contract. So you're going to know like, okay, their agent has talked to them. They know we want to sell as is, but they're still going to do an inspection and they're saying they're not going to ask for anything. Can you still ask for stuff? Yes. Um, or they're going to do an inspection and they're telling us most likely based on what we saw at the showing, we're probably going to ask you for things. We have our right and we're going to probably ask you.
right.
Or they can completely waive it. So it really breaks that down. Whereas in Wisconsin, it's just one contingency. So we're not seeing that kind of like go away as much as we were, prior years. And I know Lindsay's written on a few in a multiple. Who's calling
Yeah.
me? I think that's our aunt, Lindsay. I keep getting a restricted number, and usually that's coming from Alexa. Um,
What are
so
a
I
couple of
know
reasons why a seller would list as is? Any?
I'm not going to
It's
say what
more
I want to
money.
say. I'm
Money
not going to
oriented.
say what I want to say.
Okay. Sorry.
I I I wanted to say because they aren't smart. Really, like I think a seller thinks of it very differently, and I like the way Illinois has now broken this down because it
So,
helps me explain it better. Because like as is doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. What you
Okay.
want means nothing. Putting it in the MLS, I think just it's what is it? Shooting off your nose, biting off your nose to despite your face. Like I
mhm,
feel like a lot of sellers that put it in there, it's we just did a bunch of work. We're done. We're tapped out. We don't
Oh,
have the funds.
right.
Or it's an
the
investment property and
opposite.
I'm
Is
just
it the
not
opposite
invested
that they
in.
haven't kept up with the home and they don't have the funds either?
And
And they're
that's what
listing low?
that's part of it, I think. But that's where buyers' minds go every time. Is
Exactly.
something is wrong with the house. Something's wrong. So as a listing agent, I say I can put in like the broker remarks that like you don't really want to do a bunch of stuff. Like, cause I like to put like the expectations. Like I'm looking for a buyer with a flexible closing. I'm looking for a buyer that can do a lease back. I'm also looking, I
Mhm.
don't want to, my clients do not want to be doing a bunch of stuff. And
And you
so,
hear that a lot, a lot.
yeah. So, and then I tell the seller, like, okay, if I put that in there, that sets a precedent that I don't think
Yeah.
we want to set, because what if we get an amazing offer, like your rock star number that you're just so happy with, and
Yeah.
they do their inspection and they ask for $1,000? Are you going to go back on the market over $1,000? Because I guarantee you're going to lose more than 1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I try to get them to not, I say, I'll do my best to, when I talk to these agents as they're drafting their offer, to set that expectation that that's our dream offer, but
Yeah.
let's not advertise that as like a thing,
Mhm.
because I think especially the first time home buyers, it scares them. So if
Yeah.
you're a seller
A
out there
lot.
that has as is in your comments, even in your broker comments, I would take that out, because I think that you're doing yourself a disservice and people are looking the other way. So we're not seeing a ton of people waive inspections anymore just because they don't need to. I do think
Mhm.
we're still seeing buyers not be as picky during inspections as they were before. But as a seller, I think it's important to put your buyer hat on when you're looking at these offers, is that if I'm paying top dollar for something and I find a big problem, am I going to want to pay top dollar? No, you wouldn't
Right.
want to. So these inspections can turn up all sorts of things, from just missing a smoke detector or a loose handrail to a crack in your foundation or a soft
You
spot on
find
the roof.
that the seller had no idea about.
Yes.
We
So,
just
I
had
mean,
that where it was just
we
like,
kind of talked about, the getting ready to list. And those are some things that we go through as a team. And, I'm not going to give away all of our secrets, but to help a seller not get all this way to then be like, oh my gosh, I have multiple.
Yeah.
And once it's out there in the universe, and you
Right.
can't, it's putting the toothpaste back in the tube. Like it just doesn't happen, and it really hurts you, and it's going to cost you 10 times more money than if you found it before you went on the market and took care of it.
Right.
So inspections, that's like the contingency. Most of these offers are going to come with radon. In Illinois, you can test for radon. It's wrapped into your home inspection. Wisconsin is different. You have to ask for that separately.
Yeah.
I will say that I would, most of the time now, just the way the market is, we're not seeing people doing radon testing in Wisconsin as much as we were before the market was crazy. Reason being is, then it's one more thing that the seller has to deal with. So if they do get two offers and one's testing for radon and one isn't, you might not get it just because of that. So it's not an expensive thing in Wisconsin. So Illinois
Right.
always just charges more for the exact same thing for some reason. So testing is $150. You can do it after closing. I always tell my client, unless you're really uncomfortable, let's keep it off, because the installation of the system is $850. I've had clients be like, I could do that for $300. I know how to do it. There's YouTube videos all over. You can get these systems yourself.
There was
So
recently there's some clients of mine that there was a news, like it was something about radon that had come up recently in the news that, it was causing a lot of, people to be sick, or, causing cancers and this and that. And I think that that kind of like scared my specific people, but I kind of talked to them about it too, about how they can, take care of it once they are in the home, to make sure that you're never having to worry about it because that system's in there.
Mhm.
right. And I think
Peace of
radon's always caused cancer. So
Right.
this isn't like
Exactly.
something
This is
new. And I will tell you,
that it made it scarier, that it.
I don't think we didn't see it on the contracts. We didn't hear about it at all till maybe 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
So all those contracts I did before, no one tested for radon. Nobody
Right.
talked about radon. There wasn't a radon disclosure. There was nothing. So, I kind of lead with that, and you have to remind buyers too, and that like things like mold and radon, these are environmental things. These are things that are rectifiable. These are not things that you walk in the home and you drop dead or instantly get cancer. This is
Right.
not a gunshot
Right.
wound to the head. So this is something that to actually get cancer from radon would have to be extreme prolonged exposure, and it's in your basement. So if your bedroom's in your basement and you are not leaving your bedroom for years, you're probably going to get cancer if you have high radon.
Mhm.
So if this
Because
isn't
it's-
an
is it-
this
is it
isn't
in
an
the soil?
emergency.
It's
Yeah,
in
it
the
comes out
soil?
of the ground. So usually you see it on a house with a basement because it's, you're digging up more of the earth. So this isn't something that is going to instantly, you're not going to be sick.
Yeah.
You're not going to
And,
get sick
I
being in
mean,
It's not like carbon monoxide where you're gonna walk, feel ill
Right.
and drop
And
dead.
another thing is, if you're just going to test for it when you buy the house, if you're that concerned about it, test for it while you live there over the years as well.
Mhm.
Right?
Right. Well, the
Like you can't
system
just say I'm
has,
going to test when I buy it and then not expect it to be there moving forward.
Yeah.
right down
A
the
lot of the
road
new
because
builds have it already in there.
Yeah.
it's coming from like any cracks too. So like every basement has cracks. So home inspectors have said a million times, there's two types of concrete, the ones that have cracks and the ones that haven't even been poured yet. And that's it. So they come in like these little cracks. So that happens over time. So yeah, you're right. Like if it's something that's so concerning, this is something you should be testing yearly. When you check your smoke
Yeah.
detectors, pay the $150. Point being, it's not that expensive, but sellers should know that that could come through on an offer, or that that's something that they could be testing for and what that means for you. Because if they do
Yeah.
test for it and it is there, they are going to 100 times ask for it. There's
Mhm.
nobody that's not going to ask for it. They're going to ask for it. Not only do you have to do the system, but you are also required to pay for a retest too and provide that. So, this could affect closing times too. Like if they find out you're supposed to close, now you got to get on someone's schedule. You got to get it in. The retest takes days to conduct and then get your results. So
Yeah.
it's, as a seller, it's important to understand what that means. The
Mhm.
next like contingency you're going to see on pretty much all offers, most offers, is financing. So, I think it's important to have an agent on your side that understands the different types. Conventional, we pretty much all know. But some of these special financing, USDA, or it's subject to them getting this credit in order for them to buy. So it's your listing agent's job. It's not your job to understand the ins and outs of this. It's their job to talk to the lender and see where they're at in the process and what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And they should have already told you. I tell people when I walk through their house, like, okay, if we get a buyer with FHA, this is going to be an issue. Are you willing to fix this? Or a
Mhm.
VA loan. They're going to test for termites. Have you ever had any pest problems?
True.
So I think the more we educate sellers on what to expect on offers, the less crazy it becomes
Right.
when they see it. And lenders, I know Laura does this. They've gotten better about calling. So usually I hear from the lender before I need to talk to them.
Right.
So
the
like,
listing agent.
yep. So like
Yeah. And
the lender's calling to say, you got an offer from Mr. and Mrs. Smith and they are rock solid. I have verified employment. I have ran their credit. They are through underwriting or whatever,
Yeah.
or they're getting Laura does a lot of different loan
temporary
programs
buy
and
downs, like a temporary
credit.
rate buy down, or more importantly, nowadays, financing has changed and it's come a long way. Sellers, I think, really hate it when they see a low down payment amount. And nowadays, often people are using lower down payment amounts and using the extra money that they have, maybe for 20%, but applying it where it's better served. So,
Correct. Yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
So yeah, I try to get sellers not to focus on that because they'll be like, well, they're 20% down. And I'm like, yeah, they're conventional at 5%. Those
Yeah.
people have to be more qualified than the 20%.
You're
They need
right.
to have lower debt to income ratios. They need to have better credit, better employment history.
Yeah.
Everything in that file has to be better for that lender to allow them to only put that 5% down. So
Mhm.
in my opinion, they're a stronger buyer. They have
Yeah.
less money, maybe less cash on hand, but
Yeah.
they are financially more, so you're going to see that. We're not seeing a ton of cash offers.
Or they have more cash on hand and they're going lower on a down payment so they can use that extra money to renovate the home because
Yeah.
it needs new floors or whatever.
Or buy down the rate because they're savvy and they
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and they know, like you said, they're going to do the renovations because they know
Yeah.
that builds their equity faster.
Yeah.
We see a
And
lot
that's
of
going to
that.
help them in the long run more than putting that money down.
100%.
Changes their payment. So that makes them more, equity
Yeah.
rich than, having the lesser payment. So we're
Yeah.
still seeing a lot of financing. So I think it's important to really have an agent that's going to dig into that financing and help you understand it. And even if you don't, it's okay. You just need to make sure your agent knows what's happening and
Yeah.
deadlines and things like that. And then lastly, the commission that's going to be on there. That was never something that was on there. I think we'll probably do another thing next month because there's just so many changes and
Hmm.
questions that have now come up that I think the way we're doing things now is, I think, less open. That they were saying we want to be more transparent. I feel like this is less transparent. And as a seller, you fill out a listing agreement. You and your agent have decided and you've agreed that you're going to pay your agent this percent and you're going to offer this percent to the buyer's agent.
Right.
When that offer comes through, it doesn't matter what you said before. So you've
Right.
already
Right.
agreed and
Like that,
negotiated.
what we ask for in commission is swaying sellers too, because there might be people out there asking for less, and I just think it would be nice if it was before when it was just set in stone, like you knew for sure. Because a lot of agents these days are just saying put it in the offer. Okay, well,
Right.
Well, yeah. And as a seller, I feel like that's a disservice because if my seller has agreed to pay 2 and I'm telling all these agents put it in the offer, most of the time I'm going to see numbers higher than that in these offers.
Yeah.
And now I put my seller in a situation where now we have to counter this. We risk losing the buyer or they have to pay it. But when I
And the
set that
seller, yeah.
precedent that it's 2, most of the time before they draft the offer, that buyer's agent has already talked to their client. They've already discussed that there's a difference between buyer agency and what they're offering. What are we going to do about it? The agent's either already agreed to come down or the buyer's already agreed to pay it. So that conversation's all happening. So for the sellers out there that are like, I'm not going to offer anything and we'll just see what comes on the offer, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. I think you're going to see
Mhm.
higher numbers. All these agents and all these different platforms are talking about how they're making more money now than they were before.
mm-hmm.
So as a listing agent now, we're saying, well, my commission's only 3%. It's only 3%. What do you want to pay them? So they're hearing the numbers in smaller instead of totality. Instead of hearing 6%, they're hearing 3, and that sounds better. They're hearing 3 and 2, or 3 and 2.5, or 3 and 3. It sounds better. And ultimately, sellers are ending up paying more money than they were before because you couldn't change it before. If you were offering 2.5, then you're paying 2.5. If you were offering 2, you were paying 2. That's what you were paying. I went and showed your listing knowing I'm only getting 2 and I just have to agree to do it for 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now we're able to negotiate that, which I think
a lot too.
Well,
I think a
and
lot of
it's going to play out as for the seller when they buy their next home as well. So
exactly.
they're going to be
It-
put into the buyer's position.
Well, and it's all relative and it's all based on your nets. Nothing has changed. So,
Yeah.
this has only happened since August. We've been talking about it probably a whole year,
Ugh.
but the year before that, we never talked about this. And
Yeah.
I showed you your net number and you were either happy with it or not. And we had to adjust the asking price accordingly. Now I still do the same thing. Are you happy or no? Like where can we find money? And I don't know. I think the whole thing's silly, but that is going to be in the offer. There has never been a spot for that. There is a spot and they are going to ask you to pay the commission.
Yeah.
That's just it. So if you are in the MLS, you are saying, agents, I'm here. My house is for sale. Come bring your buyers. Who works for free? Nobody. So you are marketing your house to people, asking them to work for you and bring their buyers to you. You better expect to pay them because they're going to ask you to. So I'll leave
well
it
said.
there. There's so
Very
much
well
to
said.
say, but I think it's important for sellers to understand that,
Yeah.
don't this whole like the media has spun this to be like, you don't have to pay a buyer's agent. That's not true. Then don't sell your house. Fine.
Yeah.
I just had one and we were $3,000 apart. I did
Mm.
reduce my commission by 0.4%. And the seller, who's also she did a limited service. So basically, you're paying a flat fee to be in the MLS. So you
Yeah.
want agents to see, agents want to get paid. So you better expect to pay them.
Mhm.
And she's been on the market like 45 days. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
feel like our offer's fair. And she basically, between price and closing cost credit, was only willing to come down $2,000. And she's like, but I'm also paying your commission. Well, did you think that it was free? Because you put it in the MLS, so an agent's going to show it, and you're
And
already not paying a listing agent. So, so anyways, we ended up walking away.
Good.
And, my buyer was
Mhm.
like, yeah, like if she thinks that you should have to pay for my
Mhm.
credit because her place is overpriced and dated, that doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
So,
Is it still on the market?
yeah, we just
So
walked away
you're going to
yesterday.
end up losing that money
Ah.
and more because she's going to have to drop her price.
Yeah. So we were arguing over $3,000. So it's like $3,000. That's only like a month in carrying costs.
Right.
Like it doesn't make sense. So that's another thing too, when you're looking at the offer and all the components of the offer, think carrying costs. Cause sometimes that buyer that's higher priced, once you factor in their longer closing time frame, or they're going to test their rate on, they could end up being less than the next offer because they're closing a month earlier. They're not testing for rate on. So look at like all the things together. So, closing date is important, and definitely, sellers don't think enough about carrying costs and what each month means to them. So I think that's important. And I think that's all.
I think that was a
Yeah.
great breakdown.
Yeah, it's a longer video, but I feel like if you stuck through it to the end, there was a lot of really good information.
Yeah. Listen
Yeah.
when you're doing the dishes one night.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And if you ever want to just see a copy of an offer, so I'm meeting buyers, so it's a little different, but I think I'm going to start bringing this. I was, when we first did the commission change, to show sellers that it's in here to ask for the commission. So to think that you're going to just slip out of this without paying is so wrong, because it's in here now. So I think that it's important to let people see it. And there's, especially in Illinois, there's been some really good changes. I love our Illinois contract versus the Wisconsin, but
Yeah.
I know it's good. It's so thorough, and they really did a good job. I mean, they're already finding things that they want to improve for the next one.
yeah.
Good.
Oh,
Awesome.
lastly, two other quick things. Earnest money. You're going to see that on an offer. So some sellers really want high earnest money. High earnest money means they have the money, right? They get a credit. But to me, earnest money doesn't mean diddly, because it is protected by these contingencies. So if something goes south and they want to get out in a contingency, they're getting that money back. So what does it matter what that number is? As long as it's a decent amount based on the purchase price, I don't care what it is. If it's a cash offer, pony up, because it's all going in the same place. And then houses to sell, we don't see that super often, but I've had it come up more recently, and people aren't understanding what like a bump or kick out clause is. So basically, if you are going to accept an offer with a house to sell, you can set the terms. So maybe they've already listed and they don't have a buyer. How long are you going to give them to wait? Maybe they have an offer and they're waiting to close. In that instance, typically we don't see you put in a kick-out clause. The kick-out clause allows you to take a secondary offer, and then you give that first buyer notice. And if you did a 48-hour kick-out clause, they have 48 hours to remove that contingency and show you proof too. So they can't just say, okay, well, we feel like we're going to roll the dice on this and hope for the best. If they're getting financing, they have to have a letter from their lender saying, yes, they can buy this. We figured it out. They can move forward without selling their house. So that's kind of what a kick-out clause means. So I know that can be
Is that the same as
confusing.
bump? A bump
Yeah.
clause? Okay.
Yeah. So some people say bump, some people say kick out. So,
Okay.
and it's marked in the MLS. So your house can still be shown. And I would say most people are selling. So it's important then you have an agent again that knows the market and has open communication with their agent as far as what is their list price going to be. Do we feel I always do a CMA, like I think
Mhm.
that they're priced really well and this is going to sell, or I think they're shooting for the stars here. And if we want to take their offer, we should suggest that they list at X, and some
Yeah.
sellers will. So that's just two more little things. So we'll recap next week and kind of tell you what we're going to talk about next month. And yeah, see you then.
All right.
Woohoo, see you next week.
Woohoo,
See
bye.
ya. Have a great day.